All right. So good morning, everybody. My name is Evan Welchel. I am the Senior Director of Revenue Marketing here at GitLab. My group consists of the sales development team, as well as digital marketing and the field marketing organization. Today's group conversation is centered around the sales development organization in particular. And welcome any questions you may have. I know that there's slide content out there. I'm sure some of it is soliciting some questions and potential discussions. So welcome to field anything that is on everyone's mind. I don't see any questions in the document yet. This might be the easiest one ever then. Come on, Ryan, kick us off with something.
I'll kick you off with something.
All right, thanks, John.
I couldn't get into the doc quick enough, so I'll just kind of start here. We have a number of contracts that have already been signed with customers, and they've been approved prices that are probably outside of the normal approval rates. And every time we do a new quote or an order for them, it has to go through a pretty rigorous process, and it's delaying things. We had talked about that, and I know that there was some work on it. I was just wondering if there's any progress to date.
I don't think that is a question for sales development for the SDR team.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I mean, I'd love to give you an answer if I had one, John.
My apologies.
I'd love to give you an answer if I had one, but I don't. So apologies.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. No problem at all.
Hey, Evan, Brandon Greenwell here. Got a quick question, hopefully related to what we're doing here. So for the SDR stuff that you're looking at, I know we talked with Matt a little bit about kind of the acceleration team and our focus. Curious if you can shed a little bit more light onto how territories are going to be, settled on, like which groups need the most help, how we're going to be aligned to those groups, what that engagement path looks like in terms of, is it specifically a time that we're in region with them? Is it an opportunity number that we're trying to fix before moving to different territories? Just curious about kind of our engagement as an acceleration team and how we work with the greater org here.
Yep, absolutely. So the plan, and there will be some iteration for sure as we learn and grow this team out and get started here in October. The plan is to look at 2 indicators for assignment. Right. So in North America, we're going to have 2 pods. We're going to try to cover 2 sales territories initially. And as the concept is proven, we will grow that team and look at additional coverage. We wanted to be very careful not to overlap or step on the toes of the named SDRs, but in fact, we wanted to help and assist the named SDRs with their activities. So part of the focus is around awareness and education. Part of it's around building qualified meetings and working with the mapped SDR to develop that territory. How we're determining the territories, there's actually a slide around the calendar that is very much so a work in progress and subject to change, but we're trying to align to the sales hiring calendars and the territories that they'll be hiring into, as well as utilizing a pipeline heat map that sales operations is maintaining. So if we see a pipeline need in a specific territory, we can drop the team in there. Right now, the concept is 30 days. That may change based off of results. We want to see how it goes. The idea is to really just have a lot of activity, both from a digital perspective, potentially field perspective. We could be doing webinars as well as the SDR activity as well. So there's some other things going on with corporate marketing, doing awareness campaigns where we may drop into those territories and piggyback on their efforts. But very much so still a learning process. But the initial concept is, as I just described. As far as goals, we don't know yet, right? We do know the metric we want to measure originally is the number of qualified meetings, and then we want to track the SAO conversion from the qualified meetings.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Yeah, I guess my question too was just more in line with, I know that originally we talked about filling pipeline for reps that are going to be hired in, or territories that haven't yet been filled. But I also know that there's a lot of territories currently with newer reps in there that don't have pipeline at all. So I was just curious kind of how that balances out and what the weight is around are we focusing on just filling the territories that have yet to be filled? Are we focusing on the newer reps that have been hired that are looking at building pipe? I'm just curious about how that process comes about. You said there was like a heat map or something.
Yeah, there's a pipeline heat map, and then it really is both, to be honest with you. And that's part of the proof of concept is it's both. We do want to get more conversations for new sales members that come on board. That's part of how this team came about and this concept came about, was looking at how we shorten the ramp time for sales, getting them more conversations. That's why the metric is going to be meetings, and the intent and the goal is going to be meetings, because we want to have those at bats. And then, the SAOs that come as a byproduct of that activity would be nice to have too.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Hey, Evan. I know you love my question, so
man, I was actually going to put a slide in there just for you, so you didn't even have to ask that question.
Rugby's 400 questions. I think we should just title it that.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. So in regard to what you just answered, right? I mean, we're doing a proof of concept for this. Great. It's going to take a little while to prove out. What do we do in the meantime? We have new reps. We have reps that have just started. We have new territories. We have all this stuff. We do not have a 1-to-1 ratio anymore. So there's an interruption. There's a gap, right?
Yep.
So what's that time frame look like, and what's the success to get there?
So the time frame, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, right? So it's not as simple as the SDR team. It goes beyond, it goes into field, it goes into digital, it goes into increasing MQLs. And I've been doing a pretty deep dive into the data lately, looking at sort of the conversion rates. Even as late as last night, looking at the MQL to lead, or MQL to opportunity conversion rates, right? We're hovering right about 3%. If you look out there, benchmarking data would say typical is 14%, but based off of our volume, 3% is actually okay based off of experience. I want to increase that. Well, obviously we have to increase the number of MQLs. That's where digital comes into play, right? So we've got a new agency that we just brought on board that we're starting to see an impact from already, as far as generating the right leads and more of them. The other piece obviously is headcount and focus. The alignment, we're shooting for maintaining the 2-to-1. I know you would like 1-to-1. I think that's where the acceleration team comes into play. They're going active in a couple weeks. And we decided to go with 6 instead of 4 based off of the coverage need. And I think that will continue. So we'll be able to cover 2 territories initially right off the bat. And I think you can see the calendar, which you will have input on, obviously, as far as how we do that alignment. So it's, you and I talk about this all the time. It's like, we know we're headed in the right direction, right? We have a plan. It's how do we do it faster? And that's something that I'm still struggling with a little bit. And I mentioned in my concerns, hiring and headcount and just the velocity behind it all is just trying to keep up, right? I think you guys got a little ahead of us.
Right. And so that's the concern, right? And yep. Some of the rest of the team too. But, we kick it off in a couple of weeks. That's the proof of concept. A couple of territories we focused on. I mean, to get that to scale, I mean, right now I need probably 10, right? 8 probably needs 10. Pitch probably needs 10. APAC is, just getting started. So what's a time frame to be at scale where, as you just said, you're kind of caught up to where the enterprise is?
I don't have a firm answer on that, and I'll tell you why. Part of what we did last week is go through the revenue model and look at the data as it attributes to the sales goals, right? And one of the formulas that I'm building out actually tells me headcount and hiring procedure, when I should be hiring and how many, based off of close one data is what I'm looking at. And you and I can run through this offline. I don't think I can get into the details on a live stream, but we've got plenty of internal data that shows us what that hiring heat map should look like. I don't have a time frame yet because we're working through the budgeting process of it all. As far as the acceleration team, the members we have are seasoned GitLabbers who have done very well in the SDR organization. So I think our speed to market is going to be a little bit faster than we expected initially. And I think these are folks who have proven and built pipeline here already at a very high rate. So I think you will see a fairly quick impact based off of their experience, as opposed to bringing up a new team that's coming into GitLab.
Sure, and I totally get that. Totally on board. Again, think you're going the right direction, all that stuff. It's just a matter of,
we got to do it faster.
It's all good.
I'm with you, but I want to get to a more predictable model, to be honest with you, based off of sales goals. And right now the model is telling me, yeah, I need to hire. So we're working on that, right? But then there's the whole budgeting process behind it as well.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
So I do have a much more relevant question. I apologize.
All right.
Earlier, and your team is doing a great job. We've always appreciated the effort that they're doing for you. I was looking at slides 4 and 6, and one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a higher percentage of deals and higher amount of work that's being generated in the SMB and mid-market, but the dollar amount's bigger in large sales kind of things, and it's probably due to the mere fact that the sales themselves are bigger. But since we're having such a higher concentration and success in small mid-market, is that something where we're focused more on? Are we kind of watching that on a regular basis to say, hey, we have more impact here, person per dollar, and and number of deals? What's that look like?
Yeah, so there's sort of two opportunities for us here, to be perfectly honest with you, when you look at the data, and unfortunately it's not regionally segmented. So I think the next round I will segment out regionally. When you look at sheer volume of leads, mid-market and SMB have a high volume of leads, right? And we have a very high success, some of it web direct as far as closing and conversions, et cetera. We have been under-resourced in mid-market and SMB on the SDR side. We've been very reactive to some extent, right? Because of just sheer volume and number of people handling that sheer volume. So one of my focuses, and something that Ryan and I have been working on, is, and part of the model I explained with Ruggie, is just how do we get to that point where we are hiring more and being more proactive and doing more outbound and acquisition in the mid-market and SMB space. So that's an area of focus. Right now, from a hiring perspective, that is where I want to grow, as well as in EMEA. Does that answer your question, John? Cool. Let me go to the document. Next question. Brandon got his. John. Francis, do you want to verbalize you? All right, cool.
Yeah, excellent. Hi, Evan. Thanks so much for this call and for your very data-oriented slide deck. I'm always saying I think the SDRs have the hardest job at GitLab, and as John said, we really appreciate everything you guys do. So I had a couple questions. The first, I think Elsa answered, which is just like, we used to have a thing called BDR, and it kind of went away, but it's really the same people doing the same things. We just changed the name. Is that right? And I apologize if I'm a little slow on the uptake, but...
It's similar, but different. And we wanted to create uniform motions across the team and have it be based off of business segment or sales segment, not BDR. BDR was traditionally inbound. They were traditionally mid-market and SMB. We wanted to create an alignment between the motions of what was historically the SDR organization and the commercial organization, or the BDRs, if you will. So moving to a segment and going outbound as well as inbound, as I just explained with John's question, we need to grow and focus activity in the commercial space. So it made sense to change it one SDR organization because the motions are now the same. There's a focus on, yes, you get some inbound. It used to be only the BDRs get inbound. Both teams get inbound now, and both teams are going to do outbound now.
Yeah, excellent. And then the next question is also mine, which is really on the enterprise side, since that's where I work. One of the challenges we have is we end up getting meetings, but the meetings are pretty low-level people, like maybe they're engineers or just like a manager level, whereas really, like, as we're going through this, especially the command of the message process and talking about the end-to-end DevOps lifecycle, we need to be having those higher-level conversations at, director, VP, higher. So, like, how are you sort of adjusting the SDR organization in a way that can kind of bring in some of those higher level meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we were all there for the training as well. We are already seeing examples. I didn't want to highlight them on this particular call because they had some data in them I couldn't share. The next call, we will highlight some of the examples we're seeing. But we are, even from an enablement perspective, adopting the command of the message principles. We're going to be building out new qualification criteria representation in Salesforce aligned to our part of the command plan, and tailor it to the command plan and represent it in the command plan document within Salesforce. Part of that's going to be, how are we up leveling? What type of questions are we asking? What kind of prospecting questions as far as who's involved in decision-making process, et cetera, that we need to implement. So we're actually already doing it today. We've seen some really killer examples from a couple of the folks on the team where they are really taking charge and implementing the command plan piece. But
awesome, thank you.
It's evolving. It's actually, believe it or not, Francis, we talked about it this morning as a team, and it's going to be one of the highlights on the group conversation in a month. We're going to take some time and actually highlight how we've adopted the command plan and show some examples and how it's changing, because I want to actually start tracking the correlation between the quality of the opportunities and the conversions and the average deal size and when we launch the command plan.
Excellent.
All right, next question. I think it's Sean.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I have a quick question. So as far as the acceleration team, do the SAOs generated by the acceleration team region go to the mapped SDR? And if so, how does that affect or impact the mapped SDR's quota or their team quota and their success moving forward?
So as of right now, the plan is for the mapped SDR to recognize quota retirement for the SAOs that come as a result of the acceleration team's efforts. The reason for that, I want it to be a team effort, right? As you know, because you're a member of the acceleration team, there will be team goals aligned to acceleration instead of individual goals, because you'll be working on one territory. I don't want there to be any sort of conflict between the mapped SDRs and the acceleration team. In fact, I want the mapped SDRs to welcome the acceleration team and work with them to develop the territory. So I think that the way we've set the goals, there will be a positive impact for everyone involved. And I think it's the fair way to do it.
And well, like, what about like an SDR who's not in that patch and they're struggling that month versus, this one SDR who's getting all these extra SAOs, and like how that might affect the team?
I mean, the way we're going to assign the team is going to be based off of hiring and pipeline needs. So it's really going to be data driven and precise in how we do that assignment. So it's not going to be based off of SDR performance. I can understand how that could be an issue, but the intent of the team is really to assist in sales and sales ramping, not to assist in SAO attainment.
Thank you.
Yep. Kyla, I think you have the next question. You want to verbalize it?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Evan. Thanks so much for your time today. My question is, what are specific things that you feel the SDR organization has been doing particularly well, and what are some areas that you can see the most improvement needed?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things we do very well is we're a very active bunch and we're a very collaborative bunch, right? So I see a lot of sharing of best practices, a lot of positive encouragement on the team. I think we've got a really solid culture on the team in the way that we share and encourage each other. One of the things that I would like to focus on is actually related to force management, our command of the message, and being able to take deals deeper and more qualified. One of the things in talking to a couple of sales folks at force management that I learned was, in many cases, they're really leading parts of the qualification, or in some cases, all of the qualification. I'd like to create a process or a structure where sales knows what they're walking into, right? The type of sales conversation you want to be in is one where you have an educated prospect. So I think it's on us to really start developing the story for sales prior to setting up that initial meeting so that we can shape the vision accurately. So that's something that I want to work on. And it's something that came from force management, obviously. And I think it will lead to higher quality ops. Realistically, the 4 core things I care about are, our impact on the sales cycle, our impact on the average deal size, the pipeline values. Those are the big ones. So I think by doing that and by preparing our team to handle those conversations better and to dig a little deeper, we'll see a positive impact from it. So that's a big focus of mine right now.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Susie, you've got the next one.
Yes, and Hannah kind of answered it, but I'm sure you can add some more color there. So I understand that linearity is pretty important, and I imagine that might be why our quota goals are set monthly, to make sure, month over month we're producing the set numbers. But I was wondering if there is any conversation or whatever be any consideration to look at quota and goals for us on a quarterly basis? Because I feel like this will help with just a lot of like the overall goals that you were mentioning, even what Francis talked on, being able to spend a little bit more time getting to those right people and getting those more qualified meetings set for the sales team.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be very general without going too specific, because there's still a lot of details to work out. But yes, there is a conversation happening around moving to quarterly instead of monthly. My concern obviously is linearity. It's very important. So we have to think of ways to incent the linearity, but still accomplish what we want to accomplish with a quarterly plan. And it can be something as simple as, you know, the impact PTO takes, right? And this is a conversation I've had with Danae and a couple of the other SDRs. The impact PTO takes on a monthly quota is pretty heavy. So we're weighing as a leadership team, we actually had this conversation on Tuesday. We're weighing the pros and cons of both, and want to make sure we socialize it with the team and get input from the team. Because we do pay out monthly, there's impacts on the team as well. So we are considering every possible angle we can of this, but it will be an open discussion when we get to that point.
Perfect, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Ryan O'Neill.
Hey, Evan. Looks like somebody answered it. I don't know who the initials are. I can go check the answer, but it's on slide 3. There appears to be almost 0 ICV created for mid-market in August. What can we do as a team to help turn this around?
So I think with mid-market, and it's something that is already happening, is developing target lists for the SDRs and having a cadence with them, pointing them in the direction you want them to go. Obviously, we need to hire still and get that rep to SDR ratio down in mid-market so that we can be more strategic in our activities. But I think that there's a couple pieces there. One, we know as we've had the conversation that we've had some systematic issues with getting the trial leads in. So that should change as it's been remedied for this month. So that's part of the impact in August. The other piece is obviously getting a tighter alignment and being a little bit more proactive in our approach. I think that's going to help. The volume continues, right? But the volume gets spread out as we hire more. So that's why we have to get a tighter alignment between sales and the activities that we're taking from a proactive perspective. So that's something that can happen now. And I know those conversations are happening. So the tighter we get aligned there, the better.
Thank you.
Ryan, Evan, just to follow up on the conversation we had with you before, I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on bringing together the 3 aspects of revenue generation, marketing, talking about SDRs, digital, and field marketing, and how you see that going forward.
Yep, absolutely. And I can do that really quickly because it brings up an interesting point, which is I want to potentially pivot the topic of this call into a revenue marketing call so that we can tell the full story. But essentially, I want to create an alignment between field, digital, and the SDR organization that is responsible for the pipeline efforts of the company, which we are, and align them to the sales numbers. And if you understand the sales goals and your conversion rates and close rates, and you'll be able to determine quotas between MQLs all the way down to SAOs, as well as an alignment to the pipeline needs from a dollar value perspective. So I'm going to actually dive deeper into that on the next group conversation, if that's okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to give a really, really short abbreviated answer, and then we'll expand on it next month, if that's okay. Brandon, you got the next question.
Yeah, I was just looking at leads. To what degree does your team see leads that are coming from non-GitLab sources, so not GitLab.com, but examples like reInvent, Next, et cetera? How do you all see that? And any feedback on the quality of those leads, if those are helpful? They're not broken out, so I was just curious on that.
Yeah. So typically how we'll see those leads if we get the list is marketing operations will upload them into Salesforce, and then they populate in our lead views, right? And I think we went through this with the most recent show. Was it VMworld? Was the most recent show we were talking about?
Yep, that was it.
Yep. Typically, we'll create a sequence or content around it and disposition those leads through the lead views. As far as the quality of leads, I've got to look at some data. We've looked at some, and it's inconsistent. Some we're seeing lots of conversion and lots of pipeline. Was it reInvent, right? And some were not. There is definitely process improvement end to end, right? End to end that needs to happen from MPM all the way through SDR and field that needs to happen with these shows. That's something that's a handbook update that's coming as far as ironing out the who's what in the process so that we can report more accurately on the conversions. The answer to the quality I couldn't give you, but maybe an SDR could chime in or one of the SDR managers.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're in the boat with you. Keep evolving. So thank you.
You got it. Cool. We are at time. So I apologize. I will answer the remaining questions in the document right after this call. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Evan.